Hey everyone, Pugs here. Today I've got two new reviews for y'all, Nature Pants and Opposite Day. And honestly, it's gonna get a little juicy in here because one of these episodes is not one I'm known for liking very much. Which episode it is, I'll let you guys guess. I mean, if you don't have any outside knowledge, then you have a 50-50 chance of getting it right anyway. And who knows, maybe I'm predictable enough that you can tell when an episode has elements that I dislike. I don't know. So that's counting on people remembering every word I have to say, I guess. And I'm not delusional. Like always, I want to take some time and thank everyone who's been watching, liking, and commenting. Y'all know I love the support, and I will point it out every time. And that's about all I've got, so without further ado, let's just get right into it. Nature Pants, my second least favorite Season 1 episode. We meet at last. Yeah, I wasn't going to leave y'all in suspense for long. This is the episode I was talking about in the intro because I've never been a huge fan of this episode. Like, I don't actively dislike it, but it's definitely not for me, so I'm excited to talk about it. I'm the kind of person who likes to start off talking about the positives, so I'm going to get us started by talking about the good here because there's plenty of it. Let's see. There's lots of funny moments in this episode. So first off, like the beginning of the episode has one of my favorite jokes in the entire show, which is SpongeBob like throwing the fire extinguisher at the fire. That entire scene's like just peak comedy, honestly. And like I love how proud like the little sponge is when he looks like he's done something. And like the scene is so expressive as well. And, you know, I'm not the only one who loves this scene. Like, browse Twitter for long enough and you'll realize they bring up this joke monthly. Pigs will fly before this scene stops showing up on one of those best pre-movie SpongeBob jokes tweets that always go viral. And yeah, without fail, those tweets always say pre-movie or classic or some other iteration of that, because at this point, hatred of modern SpongeBob is baked into internet culture, at least on the English-speaking internet that I browse. And y'all already know I can't stand that crap. Okay, so with that little rant out of the way, let me go back to talking about the good. So after this first scene, there's some more funny moments that I want to highlight. Like, Patrick chasing SpongeBob had some pretty humorous parts to it. Not to mention that scene was the source of, like, not one, but two memes, back to back as well. SpongeBob SquarePants is quite literally a meme library, man. Like, this show will never lose cultural relevancy. So back to the topic at hand. I also love the whole scene where Sandy and Patrick act and try and get SpongeBob back through that acting, especially once Patrick starts getting hysterical and Sandy has to drag him off. Like, the voice acting from Bill Fagerbakke, once again, masterclass. And again, the expressive animation really helped complete the greatness of that scene. I also really liked the ending of the episode. That was a good stinger with the, itchy things. I can't remember what they were called. Spiders or something. Were they spiders? I don't know. Whatever. Those. And everyone, going around in a circle. Yeah, that. Anyway, thinking back to the memes and the scene that frequently makes the Twitter rounds, it's just interesting to me that this episode has spawned all three of those things, and yet Nature Pants is often forgotten about. Or at the very least, it's not highly rated. This episode's not forgettable to me, but I am in that second category of not rating it very highly. And that's just because, even with all this good, there is bad. There is a significant amount of bad. And as a caveat, I wanted to say that my perception of bad, quote-unquote bad, in this episode is definitely super subjective. So I'm sure that there's plenty of people who like the parts that I did not. And this really goes for any episode that I review. So moving on, I guess. So for me, this episode drags immensely during its middle segment. And the chase between Patrick and SpongeBob, unfortunately, it kind of goes stale at some key moments, which means that even with the funny moments in it, I don't leave that part of the episode feeling very much enjoyment or amusement. And even worse, once the chase ends with SpongeBob hiding in the jellyfish nest, the episode just outright bores me all the way up until SpongeBob finally returns home. And his lamenting walk is compelling, but at this point I'm already kind of bored, so the somber atmosphere doesn't really reinvigorate me, and the feels aren't leaned hard enough into to make me more interested. At least the hug between everyone's heartwarming though, but I don't know. Like, this episode feels much longer than it actually is, and that can either be a good thing or a bad thing for episodes of this show. Considering what I've been saying for the past few minutes, though, I'm sure it's obvious that I consider this to be a bad thing for Nature Pants. Um, Also, thinking on this episode as a whole, I just think the concept for this episode is odd. Now, at this point, it's still very early in SpongeBob SquarePants' run, so I'll cut everyone some slack here. But frankly, this episode just feels out of character to me. Sure, we know that SpongeBob likes to jellyfish, and we can infer from that perhaps he enjoys the outdoors, but we've seen next to nothing of his love of nature up to this point in the series. And SpongeBob himself is very imaginative and idealistic, but he loves his job at the Krusty Krab. That was something established in the very first episode. And you're telling me that he's fine with abandoning it and all of his friends and his entire life in Bikini Bottom just to pull a Chris McCandless? Yeah, no. And SpongeBob is episodic, but these characters still have established traits and motivations. Things might shift slightly from episode to episode, but the cores of their characters still stay the same. What happens here feels a bit too out of the bounds of SpongeBob's established character, at least in my opinion. I will say, though, that this episode's existence does help future episodes like The Sponge Who Could Fly immensely, so I guess this kind of character context works both ways. And, oh my gosh, tangent alert, actually. But, now that I'm thinking about it, this episode feels like a response to a certain book that came out a few years prior to the episode airing. A book I was forced to read in high school. A book that I may or may not have already referenced while recording this review. I wonder if this was intentional. I don't know. Maybe the moral of the story. Kids, just don't just decide that the world is your oyster and go try and live in the wild. Okay, it's a bad idea, and not to mention it supports imperialism and colonialism. Gross. Anyway, Nature Pants is, to me, this show's first dud. And that's okay. Every show has duds. And because this episode is a dud that I feel so ambivalent towards and avoid rewatching, Nature Pants is a first of its kind. AKA, it's the first episode I'm putting in my okay tier, as it just barely misses the mark for good. This is not a bad episode, but there are just too many problems with it for me to enjoy watching all that much. So, I usually watch the first scene and skip the rest, which isn't really a great sign for this episode at all. And not to mention, it makes me miss that excellent scene with Patrick and Sandy. But the boredom, man, I simply can't do it sometimes. And the out-of-characterness, it annoys me as well. So that's why this episode is being put in my okay tier with a score of 6.9 out of 10. Next up, we've got Opposite Day. And I'm going to just tell y'all right now, I just like this episode. Get it?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Hey now, don't hate because I'm festive. Yeah, that's right. Happy Opposite Day Reviewing Day. Now, I just want y'all to notice how I didn't say I hate the episode, because the opposite of that would be me saying I absolutely adore this episode, right? And, well, that's not quite how I'd describe my feelings towards this episode either. So let's talk about it. First and foremost, I love the very beginning of this episode because I am that person who sends all my friends a clip of this scene when their birthday comes around. It's just so adorable, okay? The happy birthday Squidward. It's not oh my god, it's just, and then I don't know, I remember the pin the tail of the seahorse and how they're bobbing up and down SpongeBob and Patrick. It's just so cute, okay? I just love this scene. Okay, anyway, just wanted to get that out of the way. So let me talk about the other parts of the episode that I like. See, I love the concept of this episode. Whenever I rewatch it, I feel like I'm a little kid again, taking fun holidays to their natural conclusion, in the eyes of child me at least, messing with my friends and family by declaring it opposite day, especially during April Fools. It's a very nostalgic and whimsical feeling I get watching this episode, and those are always pleasant feelings to have. And the plot and concept of this episode also lend themselves to lots of funny moments, I love the sequence of SpongeBob and Patrick messing around with the idea of being opposite. It's just really cute. And I love how they're just interposed on top of random backgrounds while it's happening. I don't know. I just thought that was a fun little design choice. And not to mention, Gary gets in on the action too with eating all fancy And a little before that, like Patrick taking the holiday too literally is hilarious. Like, breathe, man, breathe. Like, what you doing, bro? And even before that, Patrick's reaction to SpongeBob's act is funny and adorable, even if it is him crying dramatically. God, that makes me sound so evil. I promise I don't find joy in other people's pain. Anywho, moving on to later in the episode, SpongeBob figuring out that they need to act like Squidward was fun as well, and I like the little song that SpongeBob and Patrick sing about being Squidward. I think that's really cute. And then, of course, we've got the iconic, I'm Squidward, you're Squidward, we're all Squidward. Are there any other Squidwards I should know about? Leading into one of the best cuts of all time, Gary acting like Squidward. And speaking of, can we talk about the real estate agent real quick in this episode? Like, she was a great supporting character. I loved her design and her voice acting. Like, Serena Irwin always gets the job done, okay? She did that. Another thing I love in this episode is that it has some absolutely gorgeous backgrounds. The very first shot of the episode with the clam and the shot of Conch Street early in the morning is just amazing to look at. I love the yellows and greens and blues. And then a little later, when Squidward tells SpongeBob all about Opposite Day, we get more gorgeous morning backgrounds, not to mention the shots of Bikini Atoll at night and dawn too. And also, I noticed that like when Squidward first gets his idea of Opposite Day, there's like the shot outside his house is like really vibrant and colorful for season 1. I mean, backgrounds were always drawn vibrantly, but like something about the way season 1 was produced made it have like the darker muted colors compared to the rest of the show, so that's a fun little tidbit, I guess. Okay, so with all of that good stuff said, I'm gonna be switching gears a bit and hitting the questions of why I don't adore this episode. Frankly, the answer to that question is Squidward himself. He was just real weak in this episode. Like, nothing he does really makes me laugh, and he feels a bit too mean-spirited in this episode. Like, and SpongeBob and Patrick aren't really that deserving of it. I mean, I know that he's, like, at his wit's end, and that's the whole point, but, like, like, the ending of this episode was just a bit too much, you know, and it wasn't really all that funny. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I'm offended by Squidward's portrayal here or anything, but it just didn't quite resonate with me this time. And that's really all I got to say on that. This episode isn't really laugh out loud hilarious either. It's more passively than actively enjoyable, so that also kind of docks a couple points off. But that's more nitpicking because I already had something I had a problem with in this episode. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have much else to say other than that. Like, I know the section of dislikes feels so much shorter than my section of likes, but, like, these dislikes are significant. And, like, because I didn't connect with such a big part of the episode, but I enjoyed it very much otherwise, this episode is situated firmly in my good tier, coming in with a score of 7.5 out of 10. As always, I'm going to end this review with some closing thoughts of mine, aka where I spitball about anything vaguely related to today's reviews and y'all listen. So, you know, I'm glad to finally have hit these 2 episodes because Nature Pants was the first episode I wrote like a really long and comprehensive review for. So that means we're getting closer to my newer style of reviews, which I think are my best work. And for the rest of season 1, I kind of go back and forth between having really long and detailed reviews and having relatively shorter, but still much longer than every other comment on these forum discussion boards, reviews. But like, just like wait until we get to Culture Shock. Like, that is still one of my longest reviews that I've written on the forum. And I guess that since we're getting closer to these long reviews, I should say that my style of reviewing has changed a lot over these last few months. Now that I'm into my season 4 reviews, I've noticed that I like to chronologically move through the episode and analyze its jokes, writing, dynamics, etc. Just about any element you can think of. Perhaps I get too into the details instead of like the broader overviews that I used to do, but that's fine with me because I like getting into the details. To me, the greatest appreciation is seeing all the choices made at these small levels and seeing how those lead into the larger whole. In other words, I'm gonna keep doing it, and if anyone has a problem with it, then that's too bad for them. Okay, that's enough posturing. I'm gonna get off my high horse now, and with that, I'll just go ahead and close out this whole thing today. So I'll see y'all next time.